Hi, I'm Haley, and today we're going to be talking about Resident Evil Requiem, or Resident Evil 9. A non-spoiler summary of Resident Evil 9 for those who don't know anything about the Resident Evil series and just see the hype for the game. First of all, I'm surprised that you made it to this video, but to give you a non-spoiler summary, it is a horror game with a little bit of action, and it's very tense, very thriller. So if you're into that type of game, some games I would compare it to, obviously the other Resident Evils, but more specifically Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil. A lot of people compare it to 4. I don't have any experience with 4 whatsoever, so I can't give you that comparison. But in terms of games outside of Resident Evil, if you enjoy Silent Hill, you might enjoy this game. Granted, there's some differences for sure. Also, Alan Wake 2 is another one that's very similar. Yeah, those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. In terms of the story, a general synopsis, basically you have Grace Ashcroft is an FBI agent called on to go investigate some murders at a hotel, and she gets kidnapped and must find her way. She finds herself in a mysterious place that she must escape. And there's a supporting character named Leon, which you've probably seen lots of thirst edits about. He's basically also investigating said murders. But with all that said, this is your spoiler warning. I'm going to give you to the count of 3, and then I'm going to move on. 1, 2, 3. Okay, for those of you that have stuck around, I do have some notes in front of me, and I have kind of a structure for this one. So the first thing I want to talk about, let's talk about the fact that this game has dual protagonists. So obviously you have Grace Ashcroft, and you have Leon S. Kennedy. Leon we saw in Resident Evil 2, and Resident Evil 4, and Resident Evil 6. I think those are all the ones he's in. But anyway. So here's the thing. I think dual protagonists in this instance... Okay. So here's the risk with the dual protagonists. It can sometimes take away from the flow of the game. And a good example of this, granted I haven't played it myself, but I've watched it. The Last of Us 2, you have... spoilers for The Last of Us 2. Spoilers for The Last of Us 2. We'll give you a chance. Okay. In The Last of Us 2, you play as... what's her name? Ellie. You play as Ellie for the first half of the game, and then you go all the way back to the beginning and play as Abby. And that was a jarring experience for me, and I think probably for a lot of people. You really mess up the flow because you've got like your rising action, you hit the climax, and then boom, we're back to the beginning. Rising action, and then it kind of levels out on the end there. But it's most games are typically, most games are typically something more like you got your introductory, things escalate, things keep escalating, you hit like the final level, you get that final boss as your climax, you might have some ending sequences after that, and then it's not always a steep drop off, but it's typically like a much steeper drop off than it was a build up, in terms of rising action, and you kind of slow down, and it's kind of like if you're on a treadmill, and you kind of like you slow down. You don't just immediately stop. Maybe a treadmill is a bad example. I don't do treadmills, but like if you're on a run, you don't just immediately stop. You kind of slow it down gradually. So I think that's the risk involved here, and I do think what they attempted to do, I think kind of alleviates that a little bit and makes the dual protagonists work. So Grace's story is supposed to be more horror focused, more scary, more thrilling, keeps you on your toes. It's supposed to be more stressful because you've got a smaller inventory, and there's a lot more puzzles involved, a lot more sneaking around. It's a lot more of that, what I would call classic Resident Evil, where you're making a lot of decisions. It's a lot less action and a lot more decision making. Do I spend resources here to make my life easier later? Or do I save my resources here to make my life easier later? Like, basically, like, it's basically a constant back and forth of, do I spend my resources now or later? Now or later? Now or later? And for a lot of people, that can be really addicting. For me, that gameplay loop is very addicting. To me, that's the fun of video games. Well, one of the fun things, but especially with survival horror in particular, that decision-making aspect is my favorite part. So you can infer from that that Grace's side of the story was definitely my favorite of the two. Where Grace's story tests your ability to make decisions, Leon's gameplay is more about testing your skill in combat. Almost his entire section revolves around combat. Not so much exploration, not so much, you've got a very, very large inventory, so you're not doing a whole lot of decision making. I think it's as close to, I think the intention was for it to be very run and gun. I really do. They even give you at some point later in the story ways to buy more ammo. Now Grace can craft more ammo, but the resources that she can craft ammo with are even limited. Whereas the only limits here for Leon is finding more enemies to get more points to buy more ammo. And that's on top of being able to craft the same resources. Well, not all the same resources, but that's on top of also being able to craft resources like Grace can. Albeit much more limited. So with that said, let's backpedal a little bit. Let's talk about Grace. Grace's story I found to be very interesting. We're introduced to Grace at a computer at work, and who knows what she's doing, but she's sitting like a freak, that's for sure. Very, very comfortable in an awkward position. And she gets kind of like jolted out of her focus, I guess, by her boss. And he asks her to investigate some murders at a hotel where her mom was murdered at. Now, he did frame it as optional, but why Grace agreed to this, I don't know. I wouldn't have done it. That has got to be one of the most traumatizing, horrific things a person could go through. Not the most, I'm not saying that, but I mean, come on. She watched her mom get like straight up throat. Like, come on. And then she shows up, she's trying to do her job, gets kidnapped by some big old dude. He looks old to me. He might not be old, but... And then she wakes up in some strange place, which turns out to be the care center. But she wakes up in some strange place. She's like upside down on like a, I don't know, a gurney or something. Gets herself out of that situation. Comes face to face with my mortal enemy. Oh, fuck. Yeah, like that. Oh, and I don't have any weapons.
He's dead.
No, he's not. Grace, use your brain. He is not dead. He's gonna come back.
Infected.
What the fuck? Oh, Can I run now, please? Grace, run. Get the fuck on, Grace. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Run, Grace. Run for your goddamn motherfucking life. But, I didn't know that yet at the time. I just suspected. But comes face to face with, the girl. Or Marie. But I think it looks like at this stage now, most of the internet just calls her the girl. So I guess that's what I'll call her. So she comes face to face with the girl and her nasty teeth. The whole thing with the girl is she basically is like allergic to light. Not literally, that's not like what they tell you is wrong, but I mean, that's basically what it is. She's allergic to light or weak to light. I don't know. Light is to the girl as water is to the Wicked Witch of the West. She straight up melts. But and then yeah, so you progress forward, you meet this little girl Emily, and she's blind, and you know, Grace is trying to make her way out of the care center, and she needs to find these little cubes to put in this door, which logistically makes no sense in the real world, but this is Resident Evil. And then she ends up needing first of all, she ends up coming across Victor again, and Victor says something about like her destiny and he's not gonna hurt her, but everything else in this place is trying to hurt her, so I don't know if like you just don't care that she dies or what. And if I remember, we'll circle back around to that, by the way. But then she ends up needing Emily's help because she can't read Braille, but Emily can. Let me rephrase that. Because Grace can't read Braille, but Emily can, and she needs to be able to read Braille to get the last cube she needs, only for Emily to get kidnapped by the girl. And let me not mix stories. So then Grace jumps into the basement after the girl and after Emily, and you go through this whole segment of trying to rescue Emily from this prison cell that the girl put her in. You rescue Emily, and it was all for nothing because, long story short, Emily ends up turning into a monster. I guess I shouldn't say it was for nothing, but we'll get there. So Emily ends up turning into a monster. Leon comes up, shoots Emily. Gracie is really upset about it and basically throws in the towel. And that's when she's able to... She kind of doesn't work with the bad guys, per se. But she, like, kind of just... Alright, what's going on? What's with all this, like... What's with all this destiny and all that shit? Finds out that... Well, she thinks she's a clone, and then turns out she's not a clone, and then depending on the ending you choose, she either saves the day or she doesn't. All that to say, Grace's story, what do I think of it? I think it was good enough. It was good enough for a Resident Evil. It's about what you would expect. Now, Grace, the character, love her. She's the definition of a survivor. She's not a fighter. She's not particularly skilled. She theoretically knows a little bit about firearms from being trained by the FBI, sure, but it clearly don't do her much good. I mean, she's probably better with a weapon than I am, but she's a klutz like I am, so I relate to her in that way. And she's just terrified. She's terrified the whole time, but she's brave. She keeps moving forward. If you watched my Spirited Away video, I talked about that. How I really like that in heroine characters. You know, you have, they're afraid, but they keep moving forward because, they do what needs to be done. And I love that in a character, and Grace embodies that. So moving on from the story, we talk about Grace's progression system. Now, Grace has a phenomenal progression system, but I say that with a bias because Resident Evil 2 Remake is one of my favorite games of all time. It's that I've played, okay? Top 5 games I've ever personally played. You've got your inventory upgrades, like you find your hit pouches and you get a couple more slots to work with, which feels great in the moment, and then you realize that it's still not enough. And then I really love the you get to choose between HP upgrades or stability and firepower upgrades. So basically, do you want to have more defense or more offense? And me, I'm a tank person. I went all in on the health upgrades. I had Grace at absolute max health by the end of the game. And then you can find a better pistol, but one thing about Grace with the weapons is she doesn't have a lot of variety in weaponry. You got your handgun. First of all her weapons are handguns or throwables. And even then, they're limited. You've got the handgun that you find on the floor at some point, a handgun that's better than that one that you find in the bar. You've got the Requiem, which you start off with one single bullet, and then it takes quite some progressing before you're able to craft more or find more. And the Requiem is great, don't get me wrong, but it's not like you can just take that Requiem everywhere you go. Like, you can't just take out every enemy with the Requiem. Now, Grace has this crafting system, which I really like, especially once you involve the blood thingy. I can't remember what it's called, like the injector thingy. Blood collector. And you get to craft some really cool stuff with that. And there's quite a bit of blood to collect around the map. Now, there is a limited resource of it, so eventually you could, in theory, run out of blood to craft more resources. However, you've got to be atrocious with your resource management. I mean, absolutely atrocious. But that said, you can craft these things called hemolytic injectors, which permanently take out zombies or enemies, whatever. And I say permanently because a lot of enemies can get back up, but worse, they turn into these things called blister heads, which I found out are basically crimson heads from Resident Evil 1 HD. But I don't know enough about Resident Evil 1 HD to be able to compare the two. But here's what I can say about the blister heads. They suck. They suck whether you're playing as Grace or Leon. I hate them. They're way too fast. They're way too tanky for how scrawny they are, I guess, for lack of a better term. So you're definitely incentivized to use the hemolytic injector, or straight up blow their heads off, allegedly. There's some instances in the later parts of the game as Leon where I was pretty sure I blew something's head smooth off, only for it to turn into a blister head literally seconds later. So I don't know how true that is, or if that's just more internet rumors that I believed throughout the game. Grace has a really good progression system. You really do, you don't feel super powerful even by the end of the game when you hit the last level and there's no more really upgrades you can make. But you definitely feel the progress. I mean, you can pretty much double your inventory space. Your health is significantly. I was able to take, I think it was at least 2 hits, 2 full-on grab and bites from the girl at one point in the game. It might have been more, but at least 2. The whole point of the dual protagonist is Grace's side of the story is supposed to feel more like a horror game, more scary, more thrilling, and Leon's supposed to be more action heavy, more run and gun, you're supposed to feel more safe. You're obviously still in danger because you could, die, but you don't feel powerless like you do with Grace. Powerless. But here's the thing. It is scary. It is absolutely scary. I think the fact that you can fight back with Grace, but not well, really leans into it. And the fact that there's a lot of enemies that are just, very intimidating. But here's the thing. There's a lot of enemies where you think, oh, clearly you can't do anything to them. But you're wrong, you can. You can literally take out any enemy permanently. At least theoretically permanently, if you use the hemolytic injector. And the 2 cases I'll give as an example are the chef and Chunk. I spent so much time thinking that you can't take Chunk out, only to find out through a YouTube video when I was trying to pull sound for one of the videos where I accidentally didn't have any game sound on the recording. And they straight up just walked up behind Chunk with a hemolytic injector. Bam! And then he was done. And I was like, you could have done that? I could have done that the whole time? And then you never come back to it, so I never get to do that. I just struggled unnecessarily for a large part of the game because I didn't know. The game doesn't tell you, and maybe that's intentional, but it's frustrating, and it does take away from the horror a little bit. I think if I were to go back and replay this, I would be a lot less scared because I know more, and that's just, that's just natural. But also, a lot of the things that I found threatening in the game, I know I could just take care of. I could just walk in with a game plan and just hemolytic injector, hemolytic injector. You don't even need the Requiem. And I think there is even like a challenge that people do where you just play Grace's sections with hemolytic injectors. But I will say there is one exception to this rule. There's one enemy that you can't straight up kill and that you can't really get rid of that much. And that is the girl. The girl is what keeps Grace's horror sections horror. Or scary, I should say. The girl makes this game scary. If they didn't have the girl in this game, it's the same with like Resident Evil 2 remake is what I will compare this to, because I have enough experience to be able to talk about it from a personal standpoint. Mr. X is what made that game scary for me. I remember I had a job that required me to go up and down stairs a lot at one point in the midst of playing that game, and Resident Evil 2, I mean. And I remember I'd be going up and down the stairs, and I could hear fucking Mr. X's footsteps in my head anytime I went up and down stairs. Dunk, 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 dunk. That man's footsteps just haunted me for months, even after I was done playing the game. And that's a great villain. That's a great antagonist. A great stalker enemy. And the girl is kind of the same. Now, I'll get into this later, but part of what made the girl so scary was that I was under the impression that she's not all that exploitable because she has adaptive AI. And we will get to that because it's easily one of my biggest gripes of the game. But for my first playthrough, I spent the whole time thinking like, I can't use the same strategy too frequently, or she's going to adapt to it. So then we cut over to Leon's side of the story, and Leon is supposed to be a whole different ball game, and in some ways he is. Here's the thing. I'm not a skilled player. As a matter of fact, this was my first time, I think, ever, where a game gave me the option to choose my difficulty, and I didn't choose the easiest option. I went for the standard modern. That's what I played this game on. Standard modern. Okay? So I didn't have to deal with like ink ribbons to save. And I think classic difficulty is a little bit harder, but not as hard as insanity. But I don't know how true that is. And obviously there is the adaptive difficulty, which is a real thing. Which is, there's like a point system. And for every 1,000 points you get in that system, the difficulty raises. The enemies, I think it's like the enemies get more aggressive or more keen to your bullshit. And then every time you die, you lose 600 points. So if you die twice, your whole difficulty just went down. And boy, did I die a lot as Leon, okay? My game had to be, even though I didn't pick casual difficulty, I had to be on casual difficulty equivalent for a large chunk of the game. Because my gosh, Leon in particular, I died so many times. I don't think I died too much as Grace. I think I just spent a lot of time injured in the beginning. Which, that's the thing. I had a much easier time as Grace than I did as Leon. And that, I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. And it could be that because I'm supposed to feel more comfortable as Leon, I played more aggressively. And that was intentionally so. I did play more aggressively as Leon. I wasn't, with Grace, I was very cautious. And I avoided a lot of fights, but as Leon, especially when you get to like his main section of the game where he's not just a supporting character per se, I mean, I went after every enemy I could. I was trying to get those points. I'm trying to get these upgrades. I love an upgrade system, okay? But then, because he's like a supporting character, he's not very... His story's not all that... It's not that it's not relevant, but it definitely is not taking center stage. It's not the meat and potatoes of this game. Leon's story is basically he's been infected. Him and Sherry from Resident Evil 2, the little girl, which I didn't know until much later into the game when I just came across that information. But yeah, they're infected and they're trying to find a cure for their infection. Among other things, take down bad guys. Screw Umbrella. But I do like there's one point in the game where you come back to Raccoon City Police Station. And it's very nostalgic. It really does, like, if you played RE2 Remake, and maybe if you played the original, but I don't know as much with the original, but definitely if you played the remake, you recognize, and this might be the case with 3 as well, but I don't know, but you really do, like, you recognize the locations, and you start getting, like, this nostalgia. You remember what you were doing in that room, like, what happened, maybe things that scared you. Like, I remember this is a scene you walk by this hallway, and like in RE2 Remake, where you walk through this hallway and there's this guy and his jaws just and there's they even put Mr. X in there, and Mr. X is following you for a little bit in RPD. Now, not to the degree that it was in RE2 Make. Like, he's not like a stalker enemy like the girl is, or like Mr. X in RE2 Make is. It's more of a scripted chase sequence, but it was cool. Including the footsteps. They included the footsteps, albeit I felt like it sounded a little bit different, but and it was very actiony. It wasn't instilling the same kind of dread, probably in part because it was scripted, and it was all over very quickly. Also, there's this bit where Leon's basically like, I'm just trying to prevent anything like that. Like, no, let me do it more justice than that. He basically doesn't want to see an event like that happen ever again, and he wants to save as many people as he can. That was my interpretation. But here's the thing. What about the lady that got straight up chainsawed? You didn't do shit for that lady. What's up with that? But let's talk about his progression system a little bit. I really like that weapons box progression system, and I like that it rewards more aggressive gameplay. In that sense, it does try to stray you like in the opposite direction of Grace's, where Grace's section does reward more kind of stealthy gameplay. Kind of. It rewards smarter gameplay, I'll put it that way. Grace's section rewards smart play. Leon's section is all about engaging with the action like Leon would. And so you get points. Well, you have to carry this watch around, but you get points every time you kill an enemy. And you spend those points to upgrade your weapons. But here's the thing. These upgrades don't do shit. I'm gonna be honest. The best upgrade, like that I actually noticed a difference, I would say was probably anything that improves your aim, especially those reticles, or red dot sights, whatever you want to call them. I saw a lot of people complaining about it online, and saying like, oh, here's how you turn off the switch from third person to first person. But I thought it really helped me a lot, which makes me wonder if maybe I would have had an easier time playing Leon if I'd played in third person. I mean, in first person instead of third person. Man, it felt like, especially like towards the later parts of his section, it felt like no matter what upgrades I made, like I could have things as upgraded as it would let me, especially that shotgun. I went with the highest damage output shotgun, upgraded it as much as I could in every way except magazine size and maybe something else, but anything that increased power, anything that increased like your aim, like your steady aim ability, I guess, I upgraded it. And it felt like it didn't mean anything. It felt like it didn't make any bit of a difference. And that's the shotgun. The only weapon that I feel like truly felt deadly was the Requiem most of the time, and the sniper rifle, the first sniper rifle that you get. Those two weapons did feel truly deadly. The shotgun felt like your best choice if you're not trying to conserve ammo, you're just trying to get out of a situation. That doesn't mean that it felt good, it just meant it was your best choice, because the pistol feels completely fucking useless. Even fully upgraded. Even the higher damage output one. Completely fucking useless. Oh my gosh. I only used it when I was trying to conserve ammo on my weapons that actually do anything. And then there's the submachine guns. Now, I will say, I went with the lower damage output machine gun instead of the Uzi, which is the higher output one, because I liked the rate of fire better. But the submachine gun basically was the same as the pistol, where it was just I'm trying to preserve ammo in my actually deadly weapons. Now, there's one particular enemy who says, screw your damage output, screw your Requiem, screw your shotgun, screw your sniper rifles, they're all useless, even the chainsaw, useless. And that's the fucker, the punk rock looking fucker with the chainsaw of his own. I don't know what it is, he was tougher than fucking Mr. X. Now granted, my difficulty had probably gone down at that point, because in that one episode I died 6 times. So if you do the math, that's that's 3,600 points that my adaptive difficulty went down. That's 3 whole difficulty levels. But like, what the fuck? That guy was annoying. Here's where I started getting negative. I want to talk about internet hype versus reality, and there's 3 specific things I want to talk about where I heard all this hype on the internet, and that's what got me excited for the game in the first place. Excited to play it. It set up expectations that when it came time, expectation versus reality here. What I was told to expect coming into the game and what I actually experienced were different in these 3 specific instances. The first, since we're already talking about Leon, is Leon's action versus Grace's powerlessness. If you listen to the internet hype, they really make it seem like, one, like Leon is like basically invincible, and I will say I didn't parry a whole lot as in the beginning, or even for most of Leon's section. I didn't parry a whole lot because I wasn't like attuned to it. The most recent horror game I played before this was Silent Hill 2 Remake, which doesn't have parrying that I know of, but it does have dodging, and I dodged a lot, so I got in the habit of dodging things, not parrying, which is how I would probably play anyway. There is, as far as I could tell, no dedicated dodge button. You can move to the side, which, like, you might think, well, that is dodging. No. Your character's not like quick jump into the side. This is like their usual movement speed. They're just slowly moving in whatever direction you tell them to, even if they're running. And it's like, oh my god, will you? And there's so many times where I quick turn because I meant to dodge, because I'm just accustomed to the dodge button being what they have as the quick turn button, and it's like, oh my god. Like, I'm getting frustrated thinking about it. I hate that there's no dodging in this. And Leon's action, like, Grace is not that powerless, and Leon is not that, like, powerful. Like I said, his weapons basically, like, don't do shit for a good chunk of the game, and I struggled a lot, and I didn't struggle nearly as bad as Grace, or at least I didn't feel like I was struggling. Maybe it's because, coincidentally, I gave Grace more Grace, but, like, I had Grace so upgraded, and I had so many resources as Grace, and, like, I didn't feel powerless as Grace. I just felt like I had to be smart. Leon, I felt like there was no being smart, per se, and there was no conserving resources. I mean, you were either good or you weren't, and that's what it felt like, and I'm not good. So Leon sections all kind of sucked for me. The only bright side to Leon sections is it is not that scary. You don't feel scared. That's the only difference. The other thing on the subject of, like, Grace's resources is this advertisement, well, maybe the game, the developers, I don't know if they really advertised this, but I heard over and over again about how the Zap system's back. Oh, the Zap system, it's returned. You know, if you leave things as Grace, you can pick them up as Leon. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. So, like, you know, Grace's gameplay affects how Leon's gameplay is. Like, if you leave things as Grace, then you can take things on as Leon, it'll be easier. That is so exaggerated, so immensely exaggerated. Yeah, you can leave things as Grace, but my god, does it make no difference. If I were to go back and play this again, I'm just taking it. Whatever I can use as Grace, I'm using it. Because here's this Zap system, quote unquote, that we're talking about. Like, I left some resources in the basement when I was playing as Grace, or at least I tried to, and Leon never went into the basement, and their lab sections, as far as I could tell, never interacted. So, like they were in different parts of the lab, except for the one big room. But then, like, the only place where they, like, interacted was the care center, and it was literally Leon only intersected with Grace's section, like, where Grace also was, for all of 5 minutes, really 5 minutes, and you could have walked past all of it, because you don't even need to be there. Grace doesn't need to be there. She doesn't even go back through those. Like, if you leave enemies, Grace is never going to encounter them again, because the next time you play as Grace after that section, well, like, the next time you're back in that area, you don't have to go in either of those directions or collect any of that stuff. You can just walk right on by. So the Zap system was way overblown. It's not anything like what I suspected at all. And now granted, okay? In the original Resident Evil 2, it looks like the Zap system doesn't play that much of a difference in the game either, but it's the way people, like, made it sound on the internet, where it set me up to have, like, this expectation that got me really excited to play the game, and that expectation was just flattened when it came down to the reality of it. The absolutely most egregious thing, and this was advertised as far as I can tell, and it was definitely talked about all over the internet, and it was the thing that made me refuse to play any other horror games until I got RE9, specifically so I didn't burn myself out on horror, so I could enjoy RE9, was when I found out that the girl had adaptive AI. The stalker enemy had adaptive AI. I'm thinking, ooh, this is great. It's gonna be like Alien Isolation, which I haven't played Alien Isolation, and I made this comment at the end of my playthrough for, like, the game for RE9, that honestly, if I wanted the Xenomorph from Alien Isolation, I should have just played Alien Isolation. And I can admit that. But I was so hype and excited. I even saw a clip from, like before I started the game, or maybe before I got very far into it, one of the two, that just ended up in my feed, where you go into one of your, like, little safety light areas from the beginning of the game, which I didn't know at the time, and if you go in there too many times, she goes in and cuts the lights out, so you can't go back in there as a safe place.
That's right. She can't come in the light.
I was thinking the gameplay was gonna be like that, like, oh, you can't go into the safe space too many times, or oh, you can't use the same strategy too many times. No, I don't know how that person ended up in that situation in that clip, because I was able to go into the light as many times as I needed to. I could have gone into the light more, and I watched other people play, and they could have gone into the light more. Like, how many times did that person in that clip go into that room for the AI to be like, all right, I'm gonna go cut the lights out? Because it never happened to me. It never happened to me at any point. As a matter of fact, the most adaptive thing about the girl's AI is that, and this is, I think this is just the game in general, is she did not care about glass bottles and noises. Now, there was one thing during my gameplay that the girl did that I thought was incredibly adaptive and was terrifying when it happened. And it's one of my favorite clips from all of that, my time playing that game, is I'm in the basement section and I need to do something. I need to get something. Oh, I needed to get a power distributor, I think. Right? And there was this blister head. So I took the Requiem, blasted his head off, right? I'm going to collect this power distributor, and I hear, I'm going to put the mic away a little bit, but I hear, dum, 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 dum. Now, I have to make the assumption that the minute I pull this out of here, what is that? What is that? Nah. You know what that was? That was the minute that I turned this off, she's jumping down here. That's what that was. Thank goodness that Grace doesn't have a limited stamina bar. But oh man, are we fucked when I pull this out of here.
That was the minute that I turned this off, she's jumping down here. That's what that was.
Oh, I knew it! 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 Coming up from above me, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? You can hear her running to her little spawn point. So as soon as you cut the lights out, she can jump down and ambush you. That was phenomenal. That's the type of gameplay I was expecting from the girl. And it's not like I was doing that often enough to warrant her AI learning. That was just, I made a loud noise with the Requiem, so she came in there in the event that I might turn the lights off.
Huh?
Otherwise, I mean, she was just patrolling. That's all any of the enemies do, is just patrol. So yeah, that was definitely, is definitely the most disappointing thing from this game for me. Like, where expectation did not meet, where reality did not meet expectations for me. I really expected more from the girl. And don't get me wrong, the girl is my favorite part of this game. Aside from, I guess, maybe Grace's upgrade progression system. Maybe. But like, oh man, ugh. The girl, like the basement section, I'll just spoil it now. My favorite section of the game. So let's talk about the sections really quick. The care clinic was very reminiscent to the RPD for me, in the sense that you've got like, it's you know, I mean, it's your central location. You've got it divided into two wings, you know, left side, you know, you do this, that, or the other, then you go to the right side, you do this, that, or the other, you know. Now there was no girl in the care clinic, right, other than the beginning section of the game, which you never return to, but you do have, you have Chef patrolling on the left side and Chunk patrolling on the right side. But you can also get rid of them. Like, if you're smart enough with your gameplay, you can get rid of them, and then they're no longer a threat, and then you only have the less threatening enemies. And honestly, like, I might take out like the enemies that have like projectiles and weapons, but like the maids, you can leave them. The deaf guy, or not deaf, the blind guys, you can leave them. And then there's just regular old zombies. I mean, and I'm not saying like that they can't hurt you or that they're not a problem. Oh, and the singers are a problem. Basically, any of the enemies that are something other than a regular zombie. Honestly, I mean, if I were to go back and play the game again, I'm just conserving Requiem bullets and hemolytic injectors, and I'm just taking out the problems, and then maybe like doing the old wound them in the knee, push them down, and run past them trick, because. And most enemies don't pursue you very far. There was one instance where an enemy did pursue me for quite a bit. And that was this maid in the bathroom chased me all the way down the hall. I think the light switch guy also chased me pretty far. Well, a lot of enemies, once you break line of sight for a period of time, they kind of just give up and go back to their like usual patrol. But overall, I found the care clinic. The care clinic was great. And it would be my favorite section if it weren't for my favorite section, the basement. It's now I will say it's a lot of backtracking, because basically you're on like a glorified fetch quest, but it's not like in the care center. You kind of use things. You basically find key item, you use it. It's no longer like taking up space in your inventory. But in the basement, you need to keep free space in your inventory because you have these key items that you have to keep with you, because they're one, your safety net to keep the girl off of your tail because you keep the lights on, but two, you need them powering things to progress. And you need all of them, and you need all of them on you. You can't just take one or two with you because you'll end up needing that third one down the line to, like I said, to progress. So I like that aspect of it. I like that you're having to think about like, okay, I need to plan my route because the girl is probably going to be on my tail as soon as I turn these lights off, because she just always is. And this is where I need to go. I can book it to the nearest safety thing, or maybe I can dodge it, and then she might jump up and cut you off down the road, or you might have to deal with other zombies while she's chasing you from behind. And okay, do I take care of these zombies? Can I run past them? The decision-making aspect, the playing smart, the really having to be mindful of your resources, all of that goes into play here. It's basically take everything that you've learned up to this point, everything that you learned while you were getting your bearings in the care clinic, let's put it all to the test here in the basement. Then you have, for quite an extent of time, you play as Leon in Raccoon City. I hated Raccoon City. I'm gonna be honest, it was my least favorite part of the whole game. Honestly, the whole last half of the game was not a strong finish for me. I'm gonna be honest, I hated the Raccoon City bit because it's so large, so tedious to go from point A to point B. So if you miss anything in whatever area, or if you need to come back because you need to get a key item from somewhere else to be able to access stuff here, oh my god, you are doing so much running and there's not enough fast travel, or any fast travel. As a matter of fact, at one point I was complaining about the complete lack of fast travel, found a zip line, thought that was my fast travel, only to find out, no, that's just an entire new area that's also large and also the hardest part of the whole section of the game. So have fun with that. That was the tower of my nightmares is what that level was. Oh my gosh, I wanted to throw my... I hated it. I hated the Raccoon City section. I did like the upgrade system, hated everything else about it. Zombies with missiles, zombies with guns, and body armor, and chainsaw, punk rock, fucking invincible ass zombies, and zombies were turning into blister heads like that. Like, almost instantly for a lot of it. And it's like, what the fuck? Especially on that tower. And my weapons were doing nothing, even when they were as upgraded as I could possibly upgrade them. They were maxed out. Doing nothing. Doing absolutely nothing. Hated it. Other than the bit where you're in, like, the old ruins of the RPD. I like that, and I like the Mr. X boss fight, but even that was, like, underwhelming. And granted, that was probably because my difficulty was already, like, in the ground at that point. My adaptive difficulty was like, you died, like, 10 times in this section of the game overall. Like, you're trash at the game, so we're gonna give you the easiest Mr. X boss fight you've ever had. He's just gonna stand there and let you shoot him in the heart over and over again. And I think I died one time during that fight even, because I was trying to get better at parrying. And then you have the labs. The labs felt, at first, very reminiscent of, the labs from RE2 Make, but that quickly died because, yeah, you've got the lickers, But there was also some RE1 vibes with the way the zombies looked in there, but I don't know. I mean, this section of the game was just okay. I do have a little rant though. Those lickers were completely unfazed by bottles, like, but for some reason Grace breathed the wrong way. Like, I could be standing perfectly still and they're walking up to me and they're like, and it's like, oh my god, what the fuck do I do to get you off of my tail? I want to, especially at this stage in the game, like, I'm trying to avoid fights, okay? Because I got used to being Leon with, like, an arsenal of weaponry, and I go back to Grace, and it's like, oh, all I have is a handgun. I don't even got the Requiem no more. Just handgun. At least I got max health, though. I don't think I died any times as Grace, or throughout the game, I died very minimally as Grace, but then we played Leon, and I'm just like, bleh, died over and over again. So yeah, not a fan of the liquors, not a fan of the labs overall, but they're not my least favorite part of the game. I would say if I had to like list them in order, I would say basement's my favorite, then the care clinic, then the labs, then Raccoon City. And the last things I want to talk about, let's talk about our main antagonists. So the main antagonist is, you have Victor Gideon. That's the Professor Moody looking dude. He was okay. I wasn't particularly intimidated by him. As a matter of fact, I thought at one point that he was just going to be another stalker enemy, and I was hoping that he would just be a better stalker enemy than what I had in the care clinic, because the Chunk and Chef just weren't it. I mean, Chunk was intimidating, don't get me wrong, but Chunk was intimidating because I thought that I couldn't do anything to him. Now, in retrospect, he's not that intimidating to me, because now that I know next time I can just, and he's done. He doesn't mean anything to me, because I can get rid of the most threatening thing in that hallway. And Chef, I mean Chef, yeah, Chef was like, he was also intimidating, but he was like early game intimidating. And again, now that I know that I can straight up eliminate him from the game, it's not as intimidating. But I've done that tangent enough this video. Victor also was not that intimidating. And then you have Zeno. Zeno is supposed to be like the Wesker clone, and I thought he was going to be the final antagonist, and he was just kind of there to aura farm and then dies. Or, yeah, no, in both endings, he just dies. So, I don't know, I mean, and I would have been fine with it if they would have, like, saved him for later. Like, I don't know, he just walks away from the situation or whatever, but no, I mean, he just dies either way. And then turns out Victor is a nemesis, and it's like, what a lame final villain. I mean, he's not super lame, right? This is another expectations versus reality thing. I expected Zeno to be the final villain, especially because they waited until halfway into the game to reveal him. Now, I will say, if they hadn't introduced Zeno, Victor would have been a better antagonist to me, because he's a constant threat, per se, or at least he's driving the narrative forward as an antagonist from the very beginning of the game. But because you introduce Zeno, who is a more imposing figure, it made Victor lesser as a result. And don't get me wrong, that Victor boss fight was fun. It was probably, as Leon, the most fun I had that entire game. As Leon. Okay? Now, that lack of a dodge button really pissed me the fuck off during that Victor fight, because now I'm finally using my parry, and you have an unparryable lightning attack where he just fucking jumps down on you like he's Thor from the God of War games. What was that? Oh. I don't think that's parryable. Okay. Like, what the fuck was that about? And then we have our two endings, okay? Now, I saw a lot of people online complaining about how they got the bad ending the first time around, but I was lucky enough to pick up the hint that Elpis was actually, like, not necessarily... Well, I don't know what I expected, but I got the hint that, like, the whole point was that Elpis was supposed to be, like, the goddess of hope, so it was supposed to represent hope, release, Elpis, right? So I released Elpis on the first go-around, And I was happy I did that. I was happy I got the ending I did. And then later on, I went back and I replayed. I replayed from my most recent save so that I could see the other ending live instead of watching it on somebody's YouTube channel, because I didn't know if there was going to be gameplay with that or not, and there wasn't, so I could have just watched it. The Destroy Elpis ending is very unsatisfying, and I think the developers were kind of banking on you thinking you were supposed to destroy it and then realizing that was the wrong answer and then releasing it. So I think from a developer intention standpoint, I did things in the reverse order, where I should have destroyed it and then released it. But I'm happy with my experience. And honestly, if I wasn't doing this for a YouTube channel, I probably would have left the game alone at that. I might have just watched the final, like the other ending on YouTube and been like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't get that ending. That ending sucked. That was unsatisfying as fuck. Because it was. Also, I love that Grace is a mom now. I think that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be it for me. I don't know if I'm going to play the game again on the channel or anytime soon, really. I will say the game took me way longer than most people to complete. As a matter of fact, so after I beat the game, I went ahead and watched Moist Critical's review of the game, and I watched him play it as well. But I watched his review of the game, and he said that it took him about 12 hours to beat the game, 8 hours in game time. My game time for my original run through, like before I went and did the second ending, was 16 hours. I think even 16 hours. His was 8. That means, and I'm currently like in my free time watching him play. Yeah, he was making double my pace. Now he was walking past things that I wasn't, and he was doing a lot of like not waiting like I was, where I'd be waiting for an enemy to pass. I spent a lot of time waiting, especially on Chef. And I can admit that, but my gosh, did I play this game incredibly slow. And if I had to play it again, I would like to hopefully cut my own personal time down by about 4 hours on that one. No, 8 hours, my bad. I'd like to cut it down to 8 hours, which is about half my. I'd like to half my time. I also think if I play again, I think I want to play on classic difficulty. A lot of people might want you to play on insanity. A lot of people might want me to play on insanity difficulty, but I don't know if I really want to do that, to be honest. But it doesn't matter. It's going to be a while before I ever play this again on the channel. Yeah, overall, I really did like this game. I don't know where it stands between this game and Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is the other game that I personally played. From a story standpoint, I can only speak for... Well, actually, I can speak for quite a few of them now. From a story standpoint, I would say this one's probably... I don't know, this one might be like top 3. But from a gameplay perspective, yeah, it's a really good game. Overall, I would give this game probably like out of 10, maybe like a 8. Like an 8's probably pretty good. But that's going to be all from me. Thank you for joining me today. And let me know what you guys' thoughts are on Resident Evil Requiem. Let me know what your favorite Resident Evil game is, or what your favorite horror game is. Tell me things you liked or disliked about the game, and maybe some opinions you have that differ from mine. I know a lot of people really like the Leon section, and I can easily say it's my least favorite part of the game. I could play the game as just Grace and be happy, to be honest with you. But that's going to be all for me. Thank you for joining me, and have a great day. Bye.